There was a telephone.
It was a telephone.
And a red balloon.
And a red balloon.
And a picture of.
And a picture of.
The cow jumping over the moon.
And the cow jumping over the moon.
And there were 3 little bears.
And 3 little bears.
Sitting on chairs.
Sitting on chairs.
And 2 little kittens.
2 little kids.
And a pair of mittens.
And a pair of mittens.
And a little toy house.
Ma'am?
A little toy house.
A little toy house.
And a young mouse.
And a young mouse.
And a comb and a brush.
And a comb and a brush.
And a bowl full of mush.
And a bowl
full of mush.
full of mush.
And a quiet old lady.
And a quiet old lady.
Who was whispering.
Who was whispering.
Hush.
Hush.
Good night, room.
Good night, room.
Good night, moon.
Good night, moon.
Good night, cow.
Good night, cow.
Jumping over the moon.
Jumping over the moon.
Good night, light.
Good night, light.
And the red balloon.
And the red balloon.
Good night, bears.
Good night, bears.
Good night, chairs.
Good night, chairs.
Good night, kittens.
Good night, kittens.
And good night, mittens.
Good night, mittens.
Good night, clocks.
Good night, clock.
And good night, socks.
Good night, socks.
Good night, little house.
Good night, little house.
And good night, mouse.
And good night, mouse.
Good night, comb.
Good night, comb.
And good night, brush.
Good night, brush.
Good night, nobody.
Good night, nobody.
Good night, mush.
Good night, mush.
And good night
Good night
to the old lady.
to the old lady.
Whispering.
Whispering.
Hush.
Hush.
Good night, stars.
Good night, stars.
Good night, air.
Good night, air.
Good night, noises.
Good night, noise.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
The end.